Everyone in the hospital knew that the parents of this newborn child were certainly not happy about his birth, unlike other parents. However, no one expected that the child would be abandoned in the hospital, and his parents would disappear without a trace. One of the nurses, whose name was Melinda, decided to take action and find this precious baby's mother. After all, how could someone be so heartless and leave her own child? After a long time searching, Melinda finally found her house. She desperately wanted to know her reason. The neighbor told Melinda that she was inside, yet nobody opened the door when she knocked. Eventually, Melinda decided to take a risk and broke into the house through an open window. She wasn't responsible for her actions, as she was sick to know the truth. When she entered the house, Melinda faced the mother of the abandoned child. She was furious when suddenly she heard, "I'm so glad you came. Please help me." Melinda Miller was a 25-year-old girl from Georgia. She was a beautiful brunette with brown eyes and a nice smile. Her dream was to help people, and now it had finally come true. Melinda recently graduated as a nurse, but the career path was not what she could have expected. Melinda found a job in a hospital in the city where she studied. During her studies, she encountered many medical institutions, and this hospital was the smallest of them all. She had always dreamed of taking care of others and was excited to start a new job. Melinda enjoyed helping people and wanted to make their lives better more than anything else in the world. The smile on the patient's face was most important to her. After a few months, however, this feeling of excitement quickly faded. Melinda saw many patients who were suffering from pain, discovering the diagnosis, or receiving treatment bills. Melinda was trying to stay positive in any situation and thinking of herself as a strong woman who could handle the pressure. After all, the reality around her started to harm her. One evening, Melinda had an experience that changed her life. At that time, she officially worked in a hospital. On that day, when she had to come to the hospital for the night shift, she could not even imagine that she would almost face death. In the parking lot in front of the hospital, she was almost hit by a car. Melinda was very scared and furious, as she couldn't believe what just happened. At least, she memorized the car's license plate number. She was going to report this to the cops during lunch break, but since she was already late, she didn't do so. Melinda went to the hospital, put on an apron, and started working. She was still afraid that someone would notice she was late, but no one was actually paying attention. The hospital staff ran through the corridors and looked through all the doors as if they were looking for someone. Melinda went to the infirmary to make a list of medicines and tools. She greeted two of her friends who wrote prescriptions and talked about what was going on in the room. Apparently, the child was born a few moments before her arrival. The entire floor was in chaos as the child's parents had disappeared and left no contact details. Security personnel reviewed the camera footage but did not notice anything unusual. One of the nurses, Mary, asked Melinda to help with the investigation. Melinda entered the security room. She stood in front of the monitor, which showed the recorded material. Suddenly, the parents of the abandoned child appeared on the screen. They were leaving the hospital, and the man was pushing a woman in a wheelchair. They left the building and got into the car. In the last shot, the car can be seen speeding far beyond the field of view of the surveillance camera. Melinda was shocked. She instantly understood that it was the car that almost hit her. Unfortunately, the cameras did not capture the incident. Melinda told Mary that she had information that could help find the couple. Mary decided to call all the nurses to discuss what they should do. The nurses were discussing the situation and trying to find the best solution. Most of them agreed on calling the police, although they didn't believe that the police could do anything. It was clear that eventually the child would be adopted. If the parents left so suddenly, they did not want the child to be in their lives. Forcing them to care for an unwanted newborn would probably be the worst choice. Nevertheless, not everyone came to terms with it that easily. The other nurses agreed on the tough decision. After all, they had experienced such cases in the past. All this, however, surpassed Melinda. She was worried about the baby's mother because she saw in the tapes that she was in a bad condition. The mother looked unhappy and did not feel well enough to leave the hospital. Often, couples don't have completely different attitudes to the birth of a child. But is the father of a newborn child capable of such a thing? Melinda had a lot of unanswered questions in her head. After seeing the cute baby's face, Melinda decided to take an action. She was already sick of sad stories and cases happening in the hospital. Melinda didn't want the newborn to be another such case. She was going to find the baby's mother. Firstly, Melinda needed to find information about the mother. She started with medical records. Her data must be there since she recently gave birth. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. There was no information about her. The other thing that could help find the parents was the surveillance video, which wouldn't be enough anyway. The hospital's cameras were installed in the 1980s, and the image quality was poor. Melinda started to show the video to hospital staff, hoping some of them might have seen the parents before. Surprisingly, one of the junior nurses recognized them immediately. The child's mother came to the hospital often, and this nurse was her caretaker. Thus, the two women spent hours talking together. The woman always came alone to visits, so the nurse thought she would be a single mom. She was surprised to find a man with her that day. Melinda understood that the woman was forced to leave the hospital, and she wanted the baby. This made her more curious. She found her name in the system within minutes, Samantha P. This was all Melinda could find. There were no narratives of her family, age, living address, and background. Melinda expected to find the address of the woman. Despite this setback, she had Plan B. Melinda had a photo of the license plate of the car, which hit her nearly to death. She took a photo right after she was almost hit. Melinda reached the police and asked them to trace the car. She found out that the car was registered on a certain David M. name. The police had a picture of him because he had previously been arrested for a misdemeanor. When Melinda saw the picture of David, she immediately recognized the man who took Samantha from the hospital. She couldn't find anything about Samantha herself, but instead, she had her home address. Melinda felt she was close to uncovering the truth and doing something good for the abandoned child. She decided to go to the address she found the next day, but had some concerns about going there alone. She was afraid of David, as he had a criminal past before. She asked for help from her boyfriend, who was a seasoned judoka, and she would feel safe with him. Arriving at the address the next day, they saw the house in disrepair. The paint was peeling off the walls, and the weeds in the yard were knee-deep. There was no car in the driveway, so the couple became worried that no one was home. They knocked several times, but nobody opened the door. As they were about to leave, they heard the scream of a neighbor from the window of their house. The neighbor told them that someone was surely at home. She had seen them entering the house in the morning. The neighbor saw David bring Samantha home, who looked overwhelmed. She seemed unable to walk by herself. Melinda wanted to call the police to help her get to the house, but there was a good opportunity to break into the house through an open window. This was a perfect chance for Melinda to talk to Samantha without David. She asked the boy for help. The boy lifted her, and she easily entered the house. Melinda approached the bedroom and saw Samantha crying in her bed. She calmly sat down next to her and said, "Hello, I'm Melinda. I want to talk to you. I work at the hospital." Samantha stopped crying and looked at her. She told all the story to Melinda. Evidently, she never wanted to abandon the child, but David resisted and made her choose between him and the baby. Samantha felt she couldn't live without David. She had been distraught from the moment they left the hospital. Melinda and her boyfriend offered to take Samantha back to the hospital before David's return. Samantha hesitated for a moment, but that was all she wanted. She couldn't live without her baby. Samantha wrote a letter to David telling him that she was leaving him. She returned to the hospital to take her baby. The hospital did everything to ensure that Samantha and the baby were cared for in the best possible way. David called Samantha while she was still in the hospital. He wasn't expecting that she had chosen the child over him, but he was not going to change anything. The next week, he helped her move, and they lived apart ever since.